Greetings, sir. How does it feel to be back in Bhopal today?
Thank you so much. Lovely to be back as always. It's something that I always look forward to.
Today, we'll just not look into the technicalities of your job, but we also want to understand how you got into law school, what your journey was like throughout the law firms that you've been in, and also what should we as students look forward to when we're coming into law school?
To be honest, I'm from a legal background. My dad is a retired judge. So while I was in school, he was a practicing lawyer who had been elevated to becoming a judge, and he was posted in Delhi. My sister is a lawyer too. She had graduated from National Law School, Bangalore, and by the time I was in, I think, 11th or 12th grade, she had just started working with Amarchand in Delhi through campus recruitment. I think they played a big role in my life, and I was a confused student, like most of the students are at that point in time, not sure about what I wanted to do. I was from the science background. I had physics, chemistry, maths, biology stream. So I think majority of my family members perhaps thought I would land up being an engineer or a medical practitioner, and that's what I would do. But I wasn't sure. While I was a reasonably good student in school and I was doing quite well, I wasn't sure about it. So after my 12th, in fact, I did 1 year of Delhi University and took a break for myself to decide what I wanted to do. And I think it was my sister who was a bit of an inspiration for me. And she had just started working in Amarchand Mangaldas at that point in time. And when I saw her working and the way she was conducting herself, I thought, not a bad thing to do. Maybe I should give it a shot. And I decided to give it a shot, and I wrote the few law school exams that were there at that point in time. And of the few, I didn't qualify into NLS Bangalore at that point in time. But out of the other few, I picked Bhopal because it was geographically closer to Delhi. And that was the only reason I ended up being in NLIU Bhopal. Not fully sure whether I would continue after a year, but that's where it started.
So, sir, you said that you weren't completely sure if you would be here for more than a year. What kept you going in NLIU Bhopal?
So I think, by the time I finished the first 2 or 3 trimesters, and I still had the option to maybe, should I give National Law School Bangalore a second shot, considering that was one of the most sought after premier national law schools in India at that point in time. But after having done my first 2 trimesters of law of contracts and common law method and tort law, and I don't remember the others, these were the subjects that I remember I was doing then. I had decided that, I'm not going to repeat that. I thought the curriculum is similar, and I was quite sure that the law schools are the same sort of syllabus or modules that they follow. And logically, it wasn't making sense to repeat it again. And I also consulted my sister, who I do for some of these decisions in my life. And she also said, you know what, perhaps you should just continue. And at the end of the day, it will depend on how well you do. So I just thought I will take that with that leap of faith. I decided to continue, and absolutely no regrets. One of the best decisions of my life, that I stayed put and continued in NLIU Bhopal and didn't give it another shot.
Right. And also, sir, you've mentioned that your family has been involved both in litigating as well as in the corporate field. So are there any early decisions in your career or in your law school which drew you more towards the corporate side, and what made you finally choose the corporate setup rather than going into litigation?
I think that's a combination of what I experienced over 5 years. Perhaps in my 3rd, 4th years is when I did internships. And I think my first corporate internship was with AZB and Partners in Delhi. And in fact, I went back and interned again with AZB. I had interned in Amarchand Mangaldas as well, twice actually. So my internships were into large firms at that point in time. And that gave me a flavor of what a corporate law firm is like, what they do. And I developed a bit of interest in commercial corporate laws. Again, not sure whether I wanted to do litigation or non-litigation, because I had done a few moot courts and I thought I was good at that as well. So I was always quite confused. And I think these are good confusions in life. I never, I never, I wasn't harsh on myself. I thought it's just something that I should just try. sometimes trial and error method also works. And therefore, I decided to just sit for campus recruitment, and those were not easy days. There were only very few law firms coming to campus for recruitment, and I was lucky.
Right.
I got the first two firms to make an offer, and I picked the best offer, or the first offer I had to pick. So in fact, my first job was not in Amarchand Mangaldas. I worked for a year in Nishith Desai Associates,
Right.
and that's the firm that made the first offer after a few rounds of interview. So I decided to take that up and take a plunge. I thought if it didn't work out, I'll do something else.
And sir, how were your initial days in a corporate setup? Like, how did you figure out the waters, and how did you test the waters as a incoming fresher?
I think everything happens for a reason, and
Right.
I firmly believe so. And good that I started my career with Nishith Desai Associates. And Nishith Bhai is a great, fantastic lawyer. I have great respect for him even today. I don't miss an opportunity to go say hello to him when I'm in Bombay, whenever I can. And that was my first experience as a lawyer way back in 2005, where I started my journey with a law firm. And like any other entrant to a law firm, I was confused. I wasn't sure.
Right.
I thought I wasn't ready for it. But there was always a beginning. It was a small team. I think there were about 25, 30 lawyers at that point in time in their Bombay office at Mithil Court B wing, where the office was one floor above SEBI's office at that point in time. And it was a fantastic start to my career. I worked with some of the best minds. They're all doing very well in different organizations now, of course. But I started my journey doing, PE, general corporate, some amount of international tax and fund structuring and so on and so forth. So as a junior lawyer, I did a little bit of everything, which I think was great. Those days, there wasn't hard-coded, specialized teams that you would be put in right from the beginning.
Right.
So you get to do different things, and that's great, right? You get to experience different things. So my initial 1-2 years, I have done a little bit of everything. So I've done a bit of M&A, I've done a little bit of private equity work, I've done general corporate advisory work, and no capital markets at all. So capital markets happened by chance when I joined Amarchand.
And so you were talking about Mr. Nishith. So are there any other mentors or any other such teachers that you would want to talk about who really shaped your experience and your understanding of the law? Because as students ourselves, the kind of student I am today is because of the teachers and the mentors that I've had, even through internships. So how did they help, and how do you advise students to look at mentors and learn
that's
from
a
them?
great question. And there are at different points in time, I think I've had different mentors. And like when I did my internship, I worked with Mr. Ajay Bahl and Vinati Kastia, who are leading and senior partners at AZB right now. And they were like, just to observe them and how they conducted themselves at work and how they went about their day and advising clients. And it was inspirational. While I was interning in Amarchand Mangaldas, I had this unique opportunity where Mr. Shardul Shroff gave me an assignment out of nowhere. And I had to do something for him directly. And I was sweating and as to how I could do something for Mr. Shardul Shroff himself. And I had to prepare a note for a meeting the next day. And I did whatever I could. And I was there in the room in a meeting with him, and there were other partners as well. But it was a important meeting, and whatever I could do, like a small note that I had to prepare, and I did. So that was inspirational, and that was difficult. I was put on a spot. There was pressure, but it wasn't bad. I managed to I managed to scrape through that situation, which was good as well. And if you think about college, yes, I think while I've had, professors teaching me law, and I'm a person who believes that, I don't really rely so much on, classroom education. I never did even then. So because I feel that an educator or a faculty can only give you very theoretical knowledge, which is very important. And now it makes sense to me after having worked for so many years. Basics of Companies Act and Contract Act and other commercial laws I've learned in law school, and during my maybe competitions that I took part in, papers that I wrote, I did do a little bit of research around topics that interested me. So that helped me realize the fact that commercial law is not bad. And to be very blunt, you have to develop interest towards things that you want to do in life.
Right.
It's like, maybe having wine. When you first have a glass of wine, you will not like the taste of it.
Yeah.
You have another glass of wine, you like it better.
Right.
And you have a few more, you will then start liking, and you will understand and appreciate the difference between white and red wine.
Right.
Law or something like that. You just need to experience it, give it a shot, try different permutations and combinations
Right.
of it, and then see what works best for you.
You're absolutely right, sir. Because even for me, as a student, I've covered all of these subjects till my third year. And when I go for an internship, they do help, but they're not the complete reality or how it works out in practicality.
Yeah.
So do you think these extracurricular activities that we do, let's say moot courts, research, ADRs, do they hold any bearing in our future with respect to working with corporate firms? Do they matter when we're being recruited? How does that work?
100%. I think it's a combination of different things that you do that sort of shapes you, right?
Right.
Like I've done a few moot courts as well, and I did quite well in those. I've done research papers, I've done publications. Of course, because you do some of these things, or at that point in time, I did some of these things to ensure that I have enough things to write on my CV
Right.
and to add value to my CV other than the internships that I had done.
Right.
I did all of this. So it made sense to add value to my resume at that point in time. But I also now realize that, all of those experiences did shape me
Right.
to become what I am today. Like I had this unique opportunity to do judicial clerkship when clerkship was not even a program.
Right.
I had the opportunity to do clerkship with retired Justice Shivraj V. Patil, who was the then judge in the Supreme Court of
Right.
India. Two of my batchmates were also doing that clerkship with the other chambers, with
Right.
Justice Rumapal and one another judge. I can't remember who. That was when judicial clerkship was not even a thing.
Right.
But with our personal efforts, we managed to get that opportunity. And later, Supreme Court realized that it's not a great. It's a great platform that can be offered to students, and then
Right.
it became registrar of Supreme Court took note of it, and it
Yeah.
became a thing later.
Yeah.
But perhaps we were among the first few judicial clerks in the country.
Yeah. So before moving into a more particular topic of capital markets and your practice, I would just like to ask how your experience has been with the corporate firm with respect to the fact that people who are now choosing litigation, their launchpad comes a bit more later on in life. So this disparity, does it get closer and closer, or do you think that corporate firms as a whole give a better advantage to people coming in?
You mean to say how a corporate law firm is well suited for certain people as opposed to?
Yes. Or even how, if people want to choose litigation or corporate, what should be their incentive and what should be the pros and cons they should take into consideration?
So I think one, of course, you need to have interest,
Right.
and some sort of a vision as to where do you see yourself, uh, in a few years at least.
Right.
I mean, I'm a person who tries to think of things very practically.
Mhm.
So I'm not the person who would ask a question, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Because I myself have no idea where I'm going to be 5 years from now, even after so many years.
Yeah.
So I think, having said that, I know where I will be 1 year from now.
Yeah.
So you need to have like a short to medium run vision about where you would like to be.
Yeah.
Where you would be is, of course, in God's hands. Where you would like to be, and what you're good at as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a good batsman, you better be a good batsman. You then need to open the game, right?
Right.
It's about what your skill sets are and you realizing it over a period of time, perhaps. But I think that's why by around fourth year, fifth year, I think you know what are you reasonably good at. Are you like the orator type of a person who can speak well, argue well, or are you the kind of person who's best suited to be away from court,
Right.
but do transactional work in a corporate law firm situation where you get to negotiate and do that kind of work? So it's a decision that you need to make based on what are you good at.
So considering you did not know where you're going to be 5 years down the line, when you stumbled across capital markets, what kept you going? What was the one thing that made you sure of the fact that you want to be in capital markets as a practice area?
Like I said, when I started with capital markets, I didn't
Right.
know much about that practice area. I think 80% of the work involved taking companies public
Right.
and work around it. As a junior lawyer, I of course had to do a lot of time was spent in doing legal due diligence
Right.
of companies and then helping in drafting offer documents and related work, which I didn't know what it was all about.
Right.
So it was like a puzzle. I was just trying to do different pieces of the puzzle and it was
Mhm.
just coming together.
Yeah.
There were days I hated it. Like I just didn't like what I was doing.
Right.
And I thought, this is not what I'm meant to be doing. I
Yeah.
should rather quit. But then I wanted to give it some more time.
Yeah.
And then I had the same feeling again, perhaps. But then I thought I should give it some more time.
Yeah.
So that giving it time helped.
Yeah.
So if you're curious, you get to learn.
Right.
So I was quite fascinated by taking companies public, about the fact that these are all these are all companies. Like for going public is like marriage in an individual's life.
Yeah.
Like for a company, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
There is a lot of celebration around a public issue.
Right.
When you are matured enough to hit the markets is when you decide to go public.
Right.
And I've seen a entire phase from early 2006 7 2007 until now. I have seen ups and downs of capital markets.
Right.
Like I've seen economic downturns and the impact that it has had in India.
Yeah.
And I've seen the boom of capital markets as well. Like since 2021 to now, it's just been, I've been rolling with transactions, without absolutely no breather.
Yeah.
It's just been, so it gives me a high.
Right. You've been a partner for a while now. So firstly, what does a typical day in your life normally now look like? And also, is there any one transaction in the many years that you've worked with Amarchand Mangaldas where it completely changed the way you looked at law and the way you approached your work nowadays?
So today, of course, and I've been a partner for, I think, more than 10 years now.
Right.
And I'm an equity partner of the firm now. I co-head the capital markets practice for
Right.
South. Today, I think my day remains quite the same as a partner and as an associate. I think, or rather, I preferred it to be so. So
Okay.
I keep myself occupied with the work that I do. Of course, my role has changed substantively. As a partner, of course, I have a more supervisory role. When I in fact do business development for the firm as well.
Right.
So I have different profiles, as a partner. But as a capital markets partner, where I'm advising a company and helping the company go public, obviously I'm accountable for that client.
Right.
And in many cases, I would have gotten that transaction myself for the firm,
Right.
and I'm then executing the transaction along
Right.
with my team of principal associate, senior associate, and junior lawyers. So it's a team, of course. It's always a
Right.
teamwork. So right from kickoff of the transaction until listing is a long journey of
Yeah.
9 to 12 months, or sometimes even more.
Right.
So it's a long commitment to a client, and it becomes like a relationship that you develop with that particular client. So
Right.
that's one thing I like about capital markets, because you directly work with the board, with the senior management of the company, the founder, CEO,
Right.
or the promoter. So that becomes a deep relationship to
Right.
the extent that when you take that company public, rest assured that the client is going to come back to you for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Even when he wants to do a strategic acquisition or an M&A after that, or diversify further, for whatever it may be, or a dispute situation, the trust that you develop with a client is so deep that in most cases they would come back to you with a problem. And then I, of course, will redirect the client to a different specialist in my firm. So the client recall value is very high. That's something that excites me. And the other thing is, of course, the taking a healthcare or a pharma company public versus a defense company public versus a fintech company public versus a banking or NBFC company public is interesting, right? So while I'm not a specialist on paper, I'm a specialist as well. But just by an example, just to give you context, I was doing IPO of a defense company called Hindustan Aeronautics Limited.
Right.
So I had the opportunity to be on a fighter jet. So, as part of the experience, or I was doing IPO of Mazagon Docks, which manufactures submarines for the Indian, for the armed forces. So they took us onto a submarine to show us. So you do some interesting stuff alongside work as well, which makes it fun.
Let's go off topic for a while and let's ask you about how the experience in a fighter jet was.
Yeah, so those kind of things, as in bankers are expected to do site visits as well,
right,
during the course of an IPO. Lawyers are not expected to do it, and we normally don't. We're not part of it. But if you want to, because anyway you're doing legal due diligence of the company, you're drafting the offer document, so you want to see on ground how business is done.
Right.
you can be part of that experience as well if you wish to.
Yeah.
There is no compulsion to do it. So, like when I was doing the HAL IPO, had the unique opportunity to
Right.
go and see the manufacturing units where parts of the fighter
Right.
jet is being made, and got to sit on it as well.
Right.
So I think that was an interesting experience. Otherwise, in my life, how will I go into a submarine?
Right.
Like, so I think that was interesting as well. Or even so for that matter, there are large pharmaceutical companies which we have taken public, and to go and see how how R&D happens in a pharma company is very
Right.
interesting, right? It's actually very qualified information.
Yeah.
It's absolutely qualified information where a layperson can't even walk in,
Right.
because there is a lot of R&D involved in pharmaceutical companies. So we get to sometimes go see it, experience it.
Right.
All that's interesting. Yeah, as opposed to doing a bank's IPO.
Right.
I don't care going inside the bank, but sometimes it's fun as well.
Right. So how should a junior adapt? Because you were saying that you worked with defense companies, with infra technology,
Yeah.
pharma companies. So how do they adapt? Because you've got so much experience now, you understand how these companies work. But for a junior or for an associate coming in, how should they approach this?
No, look,
Yeah.
that happens on the job.
Right.
Like today, I'm sure you read about it. We are doing IPOs of fintech companies,
Yeah.
new age companies. The likes of Zomato and Swiggy and PhonePe and the like.
Right.
Those kind of IPOs when you do. These are all new age companies, unicorns at one point in time who are now going public, who have already gone public,
Yeah.
and there are so many more in the pipeline. Can't take names where it is not yet published information.
Right.
When you do these kind of companies, even for me, it was a learning experience to know how business is done on a by these new age companies, e-com
Right.
companies. There are tech platforms. So it's a learning curve for all of us, not just a junior lawyer, right from a junior to a partner. We work closely with the company. Of course, they know their business the most. It's
Right.
their business at the end of the day. So that brings me to an important point that, especially in a commercial transactional team,
Right.
not just capital markets, actually, you need to know business as well.
Right.
So it is not just textual knowledge of Companies Act and Contracts Act and SEBI Act
Right.
or regulations that you need to know. You definitely need to think beyond it, and you need to understand business. You need to know how business happens. Therefore, if you have a accounting background, which I didn't have, or an economics background, I'm sure it'll help. Because
Right.
today, of course, I know with practice, I can very confidently look at a balance sheet and a P&L account
Makes sense.
and talk about it confidently. So, but that happened over time with experience.
Right.
But so it's important to know. Like, so you double up as not just a lawyer. You're a lawyer. You're a CA. You're a
Yeah.
CS. It's a combination of everything. You're an MBA. So I think without these degrees, you learn aspects of all of this.
So, sir, I understand that capital markets as a thing itself has a lot of strict deadlines and a lot of time sensitive things.
Yeah.
So how do you guys as a department itself deal with such pressure, and how do you come up with more innovative things to deal with this?
Every transaction is done by a team. So
Yeah.
it is not just one or two lawyers, right? There will always be sometimes even two partners. Like there'll be a senior partner, a junior partner, there'll be a principal associate, a senior associate, multiple junior associates at
Right.
various levels, 4, 5 of them. So it's a large team of 7 or 8 lawyers doing a transaction.
Right.
And at each level, like a junior lawyer may be doing 2 matters at a time, like a
Right.
senior associate may be doing 3 or 4. I may
Right.
be doing 8 or 10 matters at a time.
Right.
But however, my involvement is limited to important issues on the transaction and meetings and conversations around it, right?
Right.
But of course, a junior lawyer who is doing due diligence and drafting certain portions of the offer document cannot be doing 7, 8 matters.
Yeah.
So he or she will be doing maybe 1 or 2 or 3, depending on
Right.
what stage of the transaction it is. So we are very, very careful about it. And we have
Yeah.
a staffing committee to staff lawyers on transactions.
Right.
They look into whether you have bandwidth to take on a new matter. We just don't, call a lawyer and say,
Right.
hey, here's your transaction, now
Right.
start working on it. It doesn't happen that way.
Right.
We have a very scientific approach towards, staffing somebody on a transaction.
Right.
We see whether that person has the bandwidth to do it. So like I don't like the word pressure.
Right.
I don't, and I encourage my team to also have a reasonably good work-life balance, because I prefer one.
Right.
So it is only fair what I want, they should have too.
Right.
So I don't work over weekends as far as I can. Of
Yeah.
course, if there is something happening on a Monday, like closing a deal is happening on a Monday, or
Right.
filing of a document is happening on a Monday, then you may end up working like on a weekend,
Yeah.
but that is not happening always. So as a practice, as a culture, we work 5 days a week,
Right.
and we have our weekends to ourselves to do what we like doing.
So now shifting a bit towards the regulatory landscape of India, we see that it's constantly changing time and again,
Yeah.
and there are better requirements by the SEBI, etc. And if you've worked on any cross-border deals, do you think there's something that the Indian market should adapt to? Because what we've seen in the current times with the situation of war or any kind of pandemic that we've seen, the Indian markets have been very resilient. So is there anything that your firm has seen or you in your practice have seen, that anything that we should be learning from any kind of cross-border transaction that you might have seen?
I think it's the other way around. I
Okay.
think the world is learning from India.
Right.
I think we are well insulated as a country, and time and again we have seen it right from COVID until now, with things, geopolitical
Right.
things happening around. Whether it is a situation in Europe or US or now in the Middle East.
Right.
With political turmoil, with war situations, pandemic that happened,
Yeah.
even around all of these natural calamities or political unrest, as if I may want to call that, Indian market has been quite insulated to a great
Right.
extent,
Right.
not 100%, but to a great extent. And we have seen how the market's been quite buoyant, and while there will always be days where it is volatile. I'm not saying it we are there is no volatility. There, of
Right.
course, is various other factors as well, right? But generally speaking, India has seen a surge in transactions.
Right.
And I'm not only talking about capital markets. If you read more, I'm sure you'll see as well, whether it's about private equity investments that's happening, or PE investors who've been exiting from companies
Right.
through IPOs. That's been happening too, with the number of IPOs that we have seen. Traditional companies doing IPOs, new age tech companies, like
Right.
I said, doing IPOs. And SEBI as a regulator has been one of the most strict regulators in the world,
Right.
like the SEC in US, and has been quite dynamic as well.
Right.
It's been, while there has been a lot of changes in the regulatory environment, and SEBI has been coming out with rules and regulations around
Right.
around doing IPOs and other capital market transactions. I think the general uh, premise has been to make doing business easier,
Right.
and encouraging companies to go public.
Right.
Having said that, they have strict norms and regulations put in place as well, tightening loose ends and
Yeah.
ensuring that founders or promoters of companies are on the hook in terms of disclosure requirements
Right.
and legal requirements that they need to meet to take
Right.
their companies public, because always SEBI looks at it through the lens of a public investor.
Right.
Like, it is about protecting minority investors, that they come up with these regulations, right? So protecting the minority investors or retail individual investors, what is key for SEBI? SEBI is not as much concerned about the promoter making money through an IPO.
Right.
So all these reforms only showcase the fact that SEBI has been very proactive,
Right.
in in helping the market adapt to what is happening around,
Right.
making regulatory reforms to make the market conducive
Right.
for even large and mid-size profitable companies, or companies which are in the path to profitability,
Right.
to hit the market, raise capital through public transactions such as IPOs. So I think it's great time for a capital markets lawyer, for
Right.
sure,
Right.
because it's so hot and it's in demand at this point in time. So any specialized capital markets lawyer in India is definitely a high demand job right now.
So we've been seeing like a lot of homecoming. Even in the previous year, there were a lot of companies like Zepto, which came back from Singapore, Delaware, and all of these jurisdictions coming back to our own
Yeah.
country. So do you think there should be more changes being brought forth in our jurisdiction so that such homecoming keeps happening and we have that kind
These
of
are
business?
all, we call it reverse flip. So
Yeah,
these
reverse flips.
companies were initially externalized to Singapore
Right.
or Mauritius or to other jurisdictions, thinking that these are companies that are tech companies and e-com platforms which Indian investors may not appreciate or understand as much,
Right.
and better placed to get listed overseas,
Right.
at NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange,
Right.
or London Stock Exchange, or Singapore Stock Exchange.
Right.
But currently and over time, they all realize that India is better suited and more sophisticated to list as a platform, and then they realize that they need to bring it back into India, and that is exactly why they're all these companies are reverse flipping back into India and listing on the Indian Stock Exchange, right? So while they were set up with a different notion, very soon they realized that value lies here, and unlocking value makes more sense in India, and therefore we've been part of many of these journeys, and in terms of unlocking their value by listing on Indian Stock Exchange. So I think the world is looking towards India today. I think that's the best way to put it.
So anyone who's reached this part of the podcast, even me myself, we're kind of getting interested in capital markets and how we want to get into this field. So how do you think we students now, let's say anyone in their first, second, third year, now going into their final years of law school, how should we tailor our CVs? How should we tailor our practice so that we who are interested in capital markets get a better platform to get a launch from there?
I think a couple of things, like even last week when I was judging the final rounds of the capital markets symposium that you had, I just realized that there were quite a few students across law schools who seemed to be interested in capital markets as a topic at least, and had picked a couple of subtopics within it and had done really good research papers, and their interest was quite evident when I was going through those papers. And of course, when the judges were asking them questions and they were answering those questions, it sort of became evident that they have done a lot of deep research on their topics. That just shows interest, because those are not things that you learn in law school. So I would think that initially, other than what you learn in law school, you also will have to just read a lot more outside of it to understand. Like we spoke about reverse flip. I'm sure there is a lot written about it, including many of us have written about it. So there will always be a lot of articles out there which talks about new age tech companies going public, and even generally how the market has been. And so your interest in capital markets should start from there, to know as much as you can, of course. And in today's day and age, you have so much of information at your fingertips, right? You can read up so much. There are beautiful articles out there, podcasts, and so many other things out there by practitioners, by industry people, by the regulator. So many things. It's like everyone writes about it. Bankers talk about it. So from that perspective, there is so much to read and learn on your own as well, to be sure that you like it. I think it's about, you need to test whether you like capital markets or not. So I think a little bit of it will depend on you developing interest around it, and then reading a little bit about it, and then sometimes internships help, because then you get a practical flavor of it to some extent. There are a lot of in the firm we have a rotation program where associates get to work in more than one team, and just to see whether they like it or not. And I know for a fact that sometimes people come into my team not wanting to stay back in the team, but that was just one choice, or they were given the team. But many a times they come and they work and then they decide to not go. So that shows that while they worked for 4 to 6 months in the team, they then understood what it entails, and then they started developing a liking for it. So there are many such examples of my associates who came into my team not having a clear idea about what it entails and not wanting to continue doing capital markets. So I think that was my story as well anyway. So
on the topic of internships now, you said, right, it's also on the basis of luck, because sometimes the team might have a lot of work and you might have a more hands-on experience. Sometimes it might be mundane tasks that the intern or the associate might not really work on. So how do you think we as students should really make the most of our internships and also have the best chances to convert?
So I think it's like luck, I don't think you can change. So that depends on what time of the year you're doing your internship. Maybe generally, towards end of a quarter, there is more work than beginning of a quarter, perhaps, in terms of launches and things like that. At this point in time, there is work always. So I don't think over the last couple of years, we've all been very busy. I think not just CAM, I'm sure every other large firm doing capital market work have all been busy. So because there is so much work happening, there is so much good transactional work happening in the market, that everyone's fairly busy and doing very well. So I think whoever has done an internship in a capital markets practice of any of the leading capital market firms would have had a great experience, to my mind. At least would have gotten a hang of what it is about. May have liked it, may not have liked it, but that's fine. and would have at least got to experience it a little bit. But yeah, 4 weeks is a very short span of time. So sometimes we have people coming in as paralegals for a
Right.
longer duration, and that's possible if you're in that city, right?
Right.
If your college is in Bangalore or Bombay or Delhi, then you can come in after your classes and do like be a paralegal. But that may not be suitable for everyone. Like
Right.
for example, it won't be you guys won't be able to do
Right.
that, right? But that's okay. But sometimes you do say a 1 month internship and then you like it, and the team also appreciates the work that you did. You get to sometimes come back as a callback internship or whatever that is. And then if you're good at what you have done, then you sometimes land up with a PPO as well, right?
And also, sir, our generation now is a bit more abreast with the use of AI, right?
Yeah.
So are you seeing the growth of AI in the firms itself? Do you yourself use it? And are you seeing a change in work culture according to it?
Yes, we have heavily invested in AI, whether it's Harvey, whether it's
Right.
Legora, whether it is so many other tools that we use. So AI, the firm is investing a lot on AI, and they are constantly training the lawyers as well. So we go through internal training on for using AI, because they have multiple uses, right?
Right.
So they have designed these AI tools for each practice area, and for specifically for capital markets.
Right.
And then there's a team that will train the capital market lawyers to and help us use AI in a particular way for
Right.
capital market transactions.
Right.
So that as we speak, we have those training sessions happening within the firm for
Right.
all of us.
Right.
And we use different kinds of AI, whether it is to respond to an email, whether it is to create a draft of an agreement, or while we skim through or do legal due diligence of large documents, how AI can be used to cull out relevant portions of an agreement. So it saves time. I don't think it replaces a lawyer, but it definitely helps in saving time while we do it.
So would you suggest that we coming in as interns, not for substantive tasks, obviously, should use AI or have a particular hold over it so that it would help in our own
Knowing
tasks?
how to use AI, I think, is important.
Okay.
I mean, it's good to know. It's something in addition to what you're
Right.
expected to know, right? But as a lawyer, I think AI should not be a shortcut such that you don't learn, without having to use an AI, right? Because I think learning happens when you read,
Right.
or when you research, or when you draft, and there is no alternative to that. That's old
Right.
school, I know,
Right.
but that's the only way you can learn
Right.
a practice area or a discipline.
Right.
Any subject that you pick, you need to, like I said, it is not a law thing. Like you want to be a good medical practitioner, you need to go through the books, right? You need to know the theory of medical science
Yeah.
to be able to treat patients. Having
Right.
said that, only when you start treating patients, you will know how to deal with situations and
Right.
symptoms. I think it's very comparable. So you need to know the theory well enough to be able to apply.
Right.
So there, I don't think there is an alternative to learning and reading and understanding what's happening around. AI simplifies certain processes.
Right.
Certain things can be done slightly faster, quicker using an AI. But I don't think it'll replace other skill sets that are required on a transaction.
So moving towards a bit more to the tail end of the conversation, I would like to ask if, let's say, you could go back in time now and go meet yourself back in your college days, is there any advice you'd want to give yourself about how to go about things?
Okay, that's a difficult question. I don't know whether I would have done anything differently. Actually, not. I think that journey was fine. I think it was I think that journey was perfect.
Right.
I think the imperfections is what made it perfect, right?
Right.
So, like any other student, I had my own fears, anxieties, ups and downs.
Right.
I did well in a paper. I did not do well in the other.
Right.
I studied for an exam. I did not for the other.
Right.
It's okay. I learned through my mistakes. But I think, like I was talking earlier today, I think I always had a goal.
Right.
And I would tell, even today, I would tell students that, you need to have a goal. You need to know where you want to get to, because only then you will get there. Unless you have a goal, nobody's going to push you to that particular point. So you need to know where you are headed, and you need to, like, at your own pace, work towards it. Some people may visibly be working very aggressively towards their goal. Like some of them may be studying right now in the library. Some of you guys are not, but that's fine. I don't think that defines it, right? There are different ways of getting to your goal.
Right.
But the fact that you have a goal is important. Like I said earlier as well, while we were at the conclave, that there is only so much that an institution can do for you,
Right.
whether it is in the form of good faculty or library or these events that we are organizing. And I think the university is doing a few things. Student bodies are doing a lot more as well,
Right.
in collaboration with the faculty members, which is great. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know how many are making use of it, how many are
Right.
attending these programs. I'm not sure. I mean,
Right.
sometimes I see that not enough are attending,
Right.
but that's a personal call. You can't force. I mean,
Right.
you can't force anybody to attend a conclave, right, or a
Right.
symposium. But I think that should be a realization that should come from within.
Right.
Because we are not in school. You guys are not in school.
Yeah.
And you're in college and you're getting closer to the real world.
Yeah.
You should therefore know what's the right thing to do.
Right.
And if you're not doing the right thing, you got to adapt to getting to do the right thing in due
Right.
course. Because like even the other panelists were talking today, right? You are the master of
Right.
your destiny.
Right.
You write your own future. It is no one else. So
Mm.
that is exactly why if I go back in time, I don't think I would have changed anything about how things were. Yeah, I would have been happy to be in a campus like this, which has so many more facilities and sport complex
Yeah.
and wonderful library and blah, blah, blah. So it's great. Like I went to Jindal. It's a great campus. I've gone to NLS Bangalore. I've gone to so many law schools.
Right.
Yeah, some campuses are larger, the other is smaller. But broadly, every law school seemed to have
The same.
some sort of similar facilities, right? Library and this and the other. So I think then it all depends on you.
Right.
So I don't think I really feel that it doesn't matter whether you are in Bangalore or Bombay or Bhopal or Sonipat. I
Right.
don't think it matters
Right.
where you are, where you're studying. It is all about writing your CV the right way.
Right.
And that depends on, which means you are the author, you have the copyright to your CV, right? It is yours.
Right.
That's your life. So it's like writing a life CV.
Right.
So I still have in my head, I still have a CV. I
Mm.
don't think the CV is going to die. The CV is going to die with me, I guess.
Are you going to still
So-
keep adding to it?
So there will be, of course, I think every transaction is on my CV in my head, right?
Right.
And it's like a score. It's like how you Sachin Tendulkar is scoring, like or Virat Kohli is scoring. Like every run matters.
Right.
So I don't think they ever retire.
Are there any books that you would recommend students to read, if there's anything that you've read that might actually help them understand all of these things much better?
I don't think there is any one book other than the Constitution of India that I can think of right now, because that is what our learned Supreme Court judge was talking about. But you know what? There is no such book. I really am a person who believes that, it's not bookish knowledge that is important.
Right.
It is the experience that you gain in practice as a practitioner that is relevant.
Right.
So when you get an opportunity to work in a law firm or a lawyer's chamber, make use of it, because that's the real world.
Right.
All of this is just time pass.
Even today, as you said, you're still running towards a certain kind of goal, and you also talked about work-life balance. What's that one thing that you do that kind of blows off the steam after the whole week of doing all of these?
So I don't wait for the
transactions?
end of the week. Actually, I hit the gym every day.
that's
So
one
I
thing.
work out, if not every day, at least 4 days a week. I work out because I think fitness is important.
Right.
I think I go to I play basketball, I
Right.
play squash, I play paddle. So sports is important for me,
Right.
and I'm a very outdoor kind of person.
Right.
So I like keeping myself physically fit. It is my way to keep myself mentally fit as well,
Right.
because of course, while I have said what I have said, no day is an easy day.
Right.
There is a difficult client out there sometimes. Amongst the nice clients, there is also a difficult client.
Right.
And I have dealt with clients in the US, in Europe, Middle East, everywhere. So
Right.
I have dealt with all types of human beings, and they all behave so differently, and I'm the same person. So if I can pull it off, I'm sure
Right.
any of you can. So I think it's just everything happens with time.
Right.
And I think my simple message therefore would be that, just be at it, just be patient, and just play your cards well.
So yeah, thank you so much, sir. We've learned a lot about your journey, the practice area, and also how students like us should now approach it. If there are any closing thoughts that you want to give to the students, please feel free to.
No, nothing else. I think you guys are all doing well, and you will continue to just give it your best shot. And I keep saying, like, be cool, calm and confident, and take the world in your stride.